So let's shift a little bit. And if you were to kind of step back and look at special education as a whole, um, so not necessarily just the, in your roles that you described, but like looking at special education in any way, what do you see as the biggest challenges, maybe for those who teach in the special education field, or for students as well? What are some of the biggest challenges that they face?
So the ones that I see and I can kind of pinpoint as biggest challenges from that overhead kind of perspective, I think people are feeling in other areas as well, not just special education. But the first one is just staffing shortages. It's huge. It makes a big impact on students when we don't have the educators there and the people with, you know, experience and training working with our students. We have a lot of great hearted people that come in and work, and we spend a lot of time and effort training them in those things that maybe don't directly impact students, right? We need to make sure we're meeting compliance with paperwork. That's a big thing in special education. Um, and just and just that staffing shortage, high caseloads, it's causing a lot of burnout, and just less time for students with a qualified educator. That's a big one. And just relating to that, special education is expensive. So this lack of funding is a big component as well that we're working on trying to manage and balance and navigate as well. I know our districts really feel it when it comes time to looking at needing more intensive services for students, or maybe they need to go to a more intensive placement. Those things are just they're expensive, so really helping navigate those. Um, and I guess one other big one would be that compliance. And I already kind of mentioned that a little bit. Just in special education, everything is driven based off of documentation. We have to have documents that show why we're doing and what we're doing and how we're doing it. And that really is that IEP, that individualized education plan. And it takes time to learn how to write those and how to write them in a way that truly reflect what we're doing, but also to meet the letter of the law, which is important that we're meeting those legal requirements. And it takes a lot of time and training for those educators on that, which can then cause some burnout as well. So it impacts that staffing component. So trying to really find a balance and navigating those things. We have really passionate people out there on trying to tackle these challenges. We have great advocates and people going to legislators to talk about this. Actually, that's one thing that I'm not at today, is I have a great group of special education administrators that are at the Capitol today in Minnesota, going and talking to everyone there and about what we're passionate about and what we need help with in the world of special education. So this is a great day to kind of talk about those challenges because yeah, we're working on it. We're trying. We have great people, but just trying to make some movement on that. So
So Cassandra, I'm going to kind of make this question a little bit more personal to some upcoming needs that I have too.
oh,
Um, yes. So
okay.
one of the SPED cooperatives that's near where we are, I'm going to be leading an AI training for them on this upcoming Friday. And they want it geared more towards, special ed type services, and how AI can be a thought partner and be a tool in their bag of tricks that they use. Which it sounds like most of the attendees that I will have will also be low incident people, deaf, hard of hearing, some autism.
Did Nan
uh,
Records request this? Sounds like Nan.
Actually, Tanya Thacker requested it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. I know who that
Yep,
is
if you
too.
know her very
Yep.
well. Yep. And so I'm really looking forward to that. But
Yeah.
finding out, because we're talking about a diverse group of roles, that those
Hmm.
people that occupy that'll be at that training, like, which I imagine is part of what you have to consider too when you start to think about staff development needs at the different districts that you work with and the different roles within those. How do you find ways to make sure that the PD that you're offering that gets sent to those different districts are going to help meet the different needs of the teachers and the different needs of the students that they serve?
I guess when it comes to staff development and when we're looking at our region, so I think about the staff development hat that I wear, right? We have 46 districts that we provide special
Yeah,
education
that's
administrative
crazy.
services to. It is, it's a lot. And then when you look inside of those districts, they have multiple buildings and we're serving students from birth to 22. So it's, a lot of different things that we have to consider. And so really what I look at is I work with a group of special education directors. There's 10 directors in our group. And we talk about, okay, what's going on in your districts? What are common themes and things that we're seeing? One of the things that we do in our special ed department is we do a new special ed teachers cohort, and that's been going on for years. And it's kind of been adjusted throughout the years based on need. Over the past few years, what we've really found is that we have a lot of tier 1 special education teachers, these people that come in with I think I have someone with their architect, like their bachelor's in architecture, no teaching experience and background, looking at what are their needs? What do we need them to know now to be able to be a great special education teacher? We can get some of those other things down the road, right? But what do they need to be able to do now to do their job? And we talk about that and look at those things. And then we build out kind of like an outline essentially of like what are the things that they need throughout the year. When's a good time to talk about behavior plans? Like behaviors tend to wrap up afterward or start to amp up after we're kind of done with that, what we call the honeymoon period, the beginning of the school year. So we know in like October, November, we're going to start to see more behaviors in some of these kids. We should be doing some training around that during that time of the year. Okay, now how are we going to get that training to 46 districts? And so we look at, having an in-person training, sure, kind of in a centralized location within our service co-op, but then also we offer things through on-demand professional development. We have virtual training and synchronous training sessions. We develop a lot of guiding documents, and we have a whole website that we've developed called the Resources for Informed Special Education Teachers, where we break down especially those due process, like paperwork compliance components, where Joe, first year teacher, goes and sits down and he needs to write an IEP. He can go on there, click on the IEP tab, and start to figure out like page by page what he needs to be able to do by providing examples and compliant things that he can be using to help support him through that process. So really, we try to do it in lots of different ways. So it's not just an all come and sit one day, get some information type of thing.
Kind of personalizing it based on the
We
needs
really
of the
personalize
individual
it.
group. Yeah.
Yeah. And we also have what are called due process specialists that support those districts. And they're kind of our boots, not kind of, they're our boots on the ground, people that are out in the districts. They're showing up in the district, sitting down, and the principal saying, yeah, Miss Johnson really needs help today figuring out some stuff for her IEP meeting that's coming up after school. Or, this student in this classroom, we're having some issues with figuring out what we need to do for curriculum to help support them in learning their everyday activities like daily living skills. So they really have those one-on-one conversations and provide that like in-person type of coaching. So they can say, okay, did you attend this training that we had? You didn't? Here's the materials. So let's go through some of this and work together. So really just having different levels of training has really been beneficial and help supporting. And trying not to forget, like, yes, we have those 20-year experience special ed teachers still out there, and talking to them and finding out what do they need and what do they want for professional development. So we try to tackle it in multiple ways. Resources, like I said, guiding documents, our website, on-demand trainings, virtual sessions, in-person trainings, kind of different cohort model trainings, just whatever we can do to try and get as much information and support to them as we can. And then having those due process specialists in the districts to really provide those supports as well to help answer those questions after we've had all of that training and access to those things.
Just seems like it's a lot of different balls to be juggling in the air at one time. So
it is.
Congrats on your massive organizational skills that you must have.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely, you have to look at everything as a task. And I think being a special education teacher first helped me kind of build those skills, because I was able to look at something in what we call task analyze. Okay, what do I need to do first? What comes next to get to my end goal? And we do that a lot with our student schools when we're working on things and helping them learn, even I think of like daily skills, how to wash dishes. Like you and I, we sit at home and we wash our dishes and we kind of know in our brain like what we're doing, right? But we really break things down to teach them, like, first, what do we do? Well, we need to identify that we have dirty dishes, right? Let's look at those, have these here ready. Let's fill our sink, get some water going, soap, like breaking everything down into steps. And that's really helped as well when we look at professional development and we look at staff training. Okay, what is our end goal? What do we need them to know how to do? And then what are the steps we need them to take to get there? And how long should it take us to get there too, right?
Mhm.
And what supports then do we need to provide throughout that? Do we need visuals like we would maybe provide for a student learning to wash dishes? Like what kind of things do we need to help um, support their professional development? And so we really try to break things down like that, and that really helps keep things a little more organized too. And then how you kind
Mhm.
of weave it all together along the way.
But it's easy for me to see at least how, you talked about some of the challenges that you faced, and you could see where if you're getting that individualized on certain things that students might need, that yeah, you're going to run into issues of staffing and timing and funding, and that's all becomes all these serious concerns that you have to deal with along with that. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to individualized education plan. That I is
Hmm.
especially important in IEP, and no IEP will ever look the same as someone else's. Um, Even if they have the same disability and they could have the same somehow scores on all of these things, it's still going to look different because of their learning style and how they need to access things and the setting that they're in and really just their end goals. Our goal for all students in special education is that they can graduate and then be a contributing member to society, right? Get out there and do and be their best and do their best that they can be. So,
So on that note then, since we've, learned a little bit about some of the things that you do and are involved in, is there a success story that you could, something specific that you could share from all your experiences that highlights the importance of special education services?
so when I appreciate you giving me this question prior to think about, because when I had to really think back on specific students, just because there's always little wins in special ed, and I really tried in special education, I'd really try to help teachers and administrators like focus on those little wins. It doesn't have to be something that everybody sees and that happens every day, or it's this big, huge, grandiose thing that happened. It's that day that your student walks in and hangs up their coat without you having to prompt them. It's that day that your student sits down and says, I'm happy to be here today. It's those are those little wins that we really find in special education that are meaningful. We have increased our correct words per minute by 2 words. I mean, that might not seem a lot to everybody else, but those 2 words were well fought for and won, and we're excited to have that progress. But when I thought about just things that highlight the importance of special education and just kind of those success stories, I had a student when I was a special education teacher, and that I am very honored to still be friends with his parents. 13 years after I worked with him, but just seeing his progression that he's made throughout life. When I first met him, he had no confidence. He was not in he was in the special education classroom a lot, getting a lot of one-on-one supports, working through a lot of academic concerns. And he really lacked confidence, and he didn't think he could go be in class with the rest of the kids. The teacher that previously worked with him prior to me did a lot of one-on-one instruction with him, and he made a lot of academic gains in that. He just wasn't quite to that point yet where he felt like he could go back into the classroom. So that's one of the goals that I had for him. And it took a lot of convincing and building trust and relationship with parents to understand that he really needed to be back in the classroom with everyone else. And we worked on that, and he made huge strides. And by the time he was in that middle school, high school transition age, he wasn't getting special education services any longer. And now he's 21 years old, and he has gone through college, and he is doing wonderful, great things and things in science and things that he, never thought he'd be able to do because he really struggled to read. And I think it's important to show that maybe not every student will have that type of success, but there are those success stories out there. Special education services are important. These kids really sometimes just need that extra boost to help them believe in themselves once we've achieved those academic skills. And I think it's important to just highlight that, because sometimes we don't see those success stories end that way, or we don't see it because no, they've moved on and grown up, and we don't see them down the road, right? But it's just one of the things that special education really can do is not only help them meet all their goals, but just build them confidence and showing how the right supports for these kids can really help them flourish and find their path in life, which is really exciting. So